Special Envoy Tom Perriello, thank you for talking to the SABC. You've just returned from Burundi and the wider region, which is your new remit. What was your assessment of the situation there?
We're extremely concerned about the humanitarian situation and the political crisis in Burundi. We're urging strong leadership from all sides within Burundi as well as across the region. We see about 200,000 refugees already, but also reports and deep concerns that this could become a more violent situation in the wake of the recent extrajudicial killings and attempts.
And just within the last few days, you've had one high-profile assassination, one high-profile attempted assassination. This seems to be heading in the wrong direction. Is that right?
It's an extremely concerning direction for the country. So far, we've seen some positive signals, including from President Nkurunziza calling for calm. We have seen the top human rights activist in the country, who's shown a great deal of courage, be shot through the face and is clinging on to life. But this is a situation that can be resolved if there is political dialogue with all sides committed to that process and strong regional and African leadership. And the U.S. and the UN stand ready to be supportive of those processes.
How do you have a credible political process, though, given that the US and others have said that the recent elections were not credible? So, I mean, how's that a good starting point?
Well, I think this is something where all sides are going to have to accept that they will not have every issue resolved before the dialogue begins. That's part of what the dialogue has to be about, is how do you find a path forward for a country that has actually shown great progress since its civil war on moving beyond ethnic divisions and getting on a stable path forward, and we don't want to see backsliding on that. So this is going to require leadership from all sides within Burundi to make sure that we see calm restored and that we see that process begun forward.
And where's the best forum for resolution here as you see it? Is it the United Nations, the African Union, some combination thereof? And what's the best forum?
Well, at key points over the last few years, the East African community has shown particular leadership and a constructive role. South Africa certainly has had a great history of being a positive force around the Arusha Accords and at other moments. So I think there's a strong preference for regional leadership across the EAC and the AU. And again, the U.S. and the UN and others stand ready to be supportive of that process. But the first steps are going to have to come from the leaders within Burundi itself, willing to sit down and find a path forward.
Burundian troops form a core component, an important component of the United Nations force in Somalia. Does that make it more difficult for the international community to have leverage?
We haven't seen that as a complicating factor yet. I think everybody has an interest in finding a stable path forward, a democratic path forward, and that there has been great leadership again, and we need to see that with a certain sense of urgency. We have over 200,000 refugees or thereabouts. We've seen incidents of violence that could be destabilizing. So I think the important thing now is to get that political dialogue restarted, and I think both Burundian leadership and regional leadership will be key for that.
Have you had any communication with the South African government about the role that it could be playing in this situation?
There have been really communications on all sides, and I think there's a real interest in figuring out the right combination of folks to help push this process forward within the region. Again, South Africa has a strong history dating back to the Arusha Accords that are such an important foundation. In fact, I think one of the most important points going forward is to ensure that those foundations that have moved Burundi beyond that civil war are treated as sacrosanct as we move forward.
Finally, in terms of a constructive first step, what would that look like?
Well, again, I think we need to see a commitment from all sides within Burundi to sitting down together to have the political dialogue for a path forward, and I think we need to see resurgent regional leadership that's been so constructive in the past to help bring that together.